doesn't know. You are deep within the gig. You are still in the term. I know we are all going through the most together. But thank you so much for taking the time to pull away from everything that we have to deal with, academics and our roles that we signed up to do, to just impart some knowledge and advice to someone who is considering being the next cluster convener of Tygerberg campus. So I'm just going to hand over to both of you to introduce yourselves quickly. You can just give your name and lol. I just did the Stellenbosch cluster one and I was about to say, give your name and the cluster you represent. Wow. Yeah, sure. What cluster are you in?
You represent Tygerberg University.
Maybe just what grade. Yeah, maybe what you're studying. Yeah, you know, it's up to you. Or just a favorite animal. I don't know. Whatever you want to add in the intro, it's up to you. We'll edit it out later anyway. So I'll hand over. Ayesha, we can start with you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Ayesha. Cluster convener for Tygerberg. My favorite animal is definitely a cat. Yeah. I'm going to go with that random fact.
Oh, the dog people just signed out.
That's okay. You know, each to his own.
True. These are the facts. Well, hello, Ayesha. Thank you for coming. Maki, I will hand over to you.
Hi, guys. My name is Maki. I'm the co-convener for Tiger Marty's cluster. Guys, I'm bad at fun facts here. But yeah, the president is speaking tonight. That's interesting. There's 500 billion that's missing. Shame let's not say that and get emails.
I love that. Like, introduce yourself at the president while she's at it.
on the tube.
Love to forget. This is how you cluster convene, people. Everything you say involves as many elements of life. I love it. Well, thank you to you both for coming through. I know when I spoke with y'all in the DMs, I was like, maybe I didn't say it, but in my mind I was saying it, in my heart I was saying it was, I think you two are the first pair of cluster conveners to do what felt like cluster convening. I think at Tygerberg we don't really know what cluster convening should look like, but this was that term where it started to take shape. It really started to take form. We really started to see the benefit that comes with having cluster conveners at Tygerberg. So I really commend the two of you for being able to build on the vision of the cluster conveners of past. I know they also had things that they probably had to sort out, and red tape and all sorts of things that we will never know what was happening behind the scenes. But for the two of you to be able to build on something that someone has started the way that you have, that is so honoring and so honorable, that's the word. And so it's really beautiful to see, and it speaks so much to the two of you as leaders and your ability to take on a vision and give it your all. So woohoo, huge clap, huge round of applause for the two of you. But I know you're humble, so you're just like, I must stop, please.
I'm gonna just head out now.
Yeah. People like, yes, a little more, just a little more. So yeah, just I had to give that as part of the intro, because I knew the two of you wouldn't say it about yourselves, but you really have been a power duo. I I know our terms all kind of started at the same time, and it's crazy because in the beginning of our term we had GBV, and now it's near the end of our term and we have GBV. And cluster has been there, like you've been present. the fact that you were present in the beginning and you're still as deeply involved now near the end, because a lot of people, when they're nearing the end of their leadership term, they're like, let it happen. The next people will deal with it. I'll write it in my report. Good luck to them. So really, I can't wait to hear from the two of you how you have been doing it, how you've maintained this momentum, and just to hear what you're going to be passing on to the next duo, because they have some big shoes to fill. That all being said, now that I'm stressing out people who are like, oh my gosh, can I do it?
Yes, you can. That's the answer.
Definitely.
You always can. You always can. Not just because we want to hand over, but really you can. But speaking now of everything you've done, the only way the two of you could have done it was to obviously apply for cluster convening. So I'm sure there's someone at Tygerberg going, I'd love to be cluster convener, but where, who, what, where, when, how, where is the flyer? How do I make it happen? Do I email who's our guy, Jimmy Folmink? Like, who, what do I do? So can you just talk us through and walk us through the process of applying, and just, the steps that you must go through in order to be a cluster convener at Tygerberg? Ayesha, would you like to start off?
So in the beginning of, like, with our application process, we had to hand in like a sort of paper. We had to email into the previous cluster conveners an online application, and that basically just asks you like basic questions about like what you want to do with cluster and how you want to move forward with cluster and stuff like that. And then there's obviously the caucus that I think a lot of people stress about, but really it's a lot more chilled than I think people sort of build it up to be. And basically in caucus you just kind of tell people what your vision for cluster is and where you want to take cluster and Tygerberg over your term if you do get the role. And people have the opportunity to kind of ask you questions, and the questions aren't necessarily like to catch you out and make you feel bad or anything like that. Like a lot of the questions help you, if you do get the role, like later in your term, to sort of start thinking about like what are the holes in your plans and what do people in your community want from you as well. So it's just a good opportunity to kind of get the ball rolling as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And Maki, do you want to add anything? I take it obviously the process was the same for both of you.
Yeah. I know one of the big things for cluster was in terms of how the votes are placed, because it has kind of in previous years always been like a very like call your friends to come to the meeting and then they'll all vote for you and then you become cluster convener, and it can be very tricky in that space. I think last year it was quite a strange time, and I think even like this year's even worse. But the way it is meant to run is that there is meant to be an electoral college of like I think 15 people from each res, like including first years, second years, Haga, mentors, all like voting as candidates on this college, and then they vote for who they want as a cluster convener. But I think also, for example, for me, I think I maybe had like 3 or 4 people that I was very close with at the caucus, like my friends that came, and the rest I think came down to obviously what you say. Do people believe what you're saying when you say it? Because I didn't necessarily know everyone there, but I was asking them to vote for me on the basis of my words and them essentially trusting what I'm going to say and that I actually am passionate about what I'm saying. So I think that voting process does need to be changed, especially on Tygerberg. I think they've made some great strides in Stellenbosch in trying to ensure that it does work out properly. But I think we do also, especially in a time of COVID, we also have to try to find a way around getting 15 people from each res to actually be present and watch all the videos and do all the stuff, because then it becomes an issue of access and a lot of other discussions. But yeah, so that was that.
Okay. Thank you for elaborating on that. Wow, what is English now? It's because the sun is down. But I really like the insights that you're both giving on especially caucus, because I know that's where everyone's mind goes to when they're applying for anything is, okay, it's great, I can put my vision down in an application form, but now you want me to stand in front of people and speak the same thing I wrote. Stress. So given how, okay, we have some strides that we need to make as well, definitely in terms of the process and procedure of voting for cluster convener in Tygerberg, but the way that it was for both of you, how was it set up, like structurally? How many questions did you get? Like, could anyone ask you a question? Did you get an endless supply of questions? How was the actual caucus itself? Maki, you can fire away because we've been with you.
Okay. So the caucus, well, the way it was structured for us was that you give your speech. So you have to set up a speech, basically stating your manifesto, why you're applying for cluster. I think it has to be like 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes max. And then from your speech, anyone can ask you questions, right? And I think that was like the very tricky part, is like literally, and it's like, I say this, like, when you think about caucus, think about an off year, like not, like it's stressful, but you need to be prepared. Like, don't dig yourself a hole. If you say something, be prepared to defend it with your life. Like, know why you're saying it, your reason, like justify, research, evidence-based medicine, whatever. Like, you need to be like prepared. Because I remember there was a question someone asked me. So I said that I wanted to have res ed, not just in O week for the first years, but like in conjunction with critical engagement, and have it the whole year round where everyone can access it. And then people came, they were like, what do you mean you want to have more critical engagement? What is this? Whatever. And like, so it's this idea, like, you have to literally, like, something that I didn't think about, like a loophole that I didn't think about, I had to come up with and actually explain at that point. So it's very much like, as much as you need to like lay out your vision and stuff, you also need to be like be able to defend what you are saying, like, to the death. And then there were also some online candidates at our caucus, so people that couldn't be there if they were on like rotation or something. So what happened with them was they sent in a video, and then the cluster conveners gave them 3 questions that they had to answer in advance. I think it was, what is something you think the community needs? And those 2 other questions that they had to answer. And I think those questions were just to kind of to allow, because obviously people can't ask them questions. You couldn't like stream them or video chat them in or whatever. So it had to be like prearranged. But I think people did have a bit of an issue with that, because it's also like someone can say something in their speech, but you can't ask them to defend it or ask them how they'll practically put it into place. So that was an issue that I think a lot of people had in that space. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, because you mentioned some really, really awesome stuff in there, because you're talking about, you're not just writing a speech or giving a speech for the sake of sounding like the best candidate, using the right words, dreaming big, or saying you want to change X, Y, Z. There's no point in writing a long speech or a short speech full of things like that if you're not prepared to be able to answer when someone asks you the how. And I think that's a big thing for inter-caucus is they think of all the nicest things to say, like they worry about the language of it all. Like, will I be able to translate from Xhosa to English? Afrikaans, what if I start speaking? Like, if you have the how, people want to hear your practical steps to campus the way that you say you want to change it, because even if someone agrees with the fact that you want to turn campus into a national heritage site, if you don't even know how you go about that procedure, I can go, Maki had that really great idea that one time, but even she didn't know how to do it. So why would I vote for her? So you really don't want to shoot yourself in the foot with, where does that term come from? Shoot yourself. Anyway, honestly, I don't know why I said it. I was like, who does it? But you don't want to put yourself in that box when you have a really good vision and you are a strong candidate. but you get thrown off follow-up questions because you didn't think of how you're actually going to implement. Because as scary as caucus can be in our minds, and yes, 1% of the population does go for the sake of eating their popcorn and having a good show, but most of the people in the room genuinely want to hear what you are presenting and what your ideas are. Like you were saying, Maki, people wanting to hear you expand on your thought process because they don't know you. Not everybody knows us. Well, I think everyone knows me, but not everybody knows everyone. So you really people want to explore more about you. If anything, you know how, Maki, you were saying it's like an OSCE. In OSCE, they say the more questions you get, the better you're actually doing because it means that the doctor's like, oh, you know that. Okay, let me ask you this then. Oh, you know that too. Okay, then let me ask you this one. Oh, you're going to know that. I remember I got into like a fight with the doctor asking me questions. At some point, he started asking me things about medicine in America. And I was like, that's it.
That's where I draw the line.
That is it. So if anything, the more questions you're getting at caucus, the more people want you to expand. It's because you said something that has sparked something in their mind and they're like, oh, that sounds really good, but that is something I also want to see happen, but me, I can't think of how. Maybe you have thought of how. So really, really, really good. Ayesha, is there anything you want to add there?
I think caucus taught me a lot as well in terms of like, it was a very good kind of springboard to go into the term with, because you hear a lot of really great ideas, not only from like the other candidates, but a lot of people in the audience, like you said, Wama, they go there because they actually care about what's going to happen in the community for the next term. So they honestly, they say things that is coming from a place that like, this is what the community wants, and it's a really good space to kind of make mental notes of like what the community is wanting from the future cluster conveners and what troubles they've had in the past as well. Because I think in caucus as well, a lot of the questions are based of like, in previous terms, this and this was lacking. How are you going to change that? And I think that's a very good kind of space to kind of really think about. Like, I feel like it's a good space to draw on what the big themes of what the community wants. In the next term.
Really beautiful. I said in the previous interview just now that I think a lot of the time, I know I put on my status a couple months ago because I was going through the most, but I was like, I just realized that you actually don't have to answer anything at caucus. Like, no one's forcing you. You really don't. You can just sit down and be like, sorry, not me. I'm not doing it. But I said in the previous interview now that in caucus, a lot of people stress themselves out unnecessarily because you tell yourself that you need to have an answer and a solution for every problem that is presented. But sometimes just being at caucus leaves you with more ideas and plans, like you say, Ayesha, than you actually had coming in. And you're like, I didn't know that there are no pad dispensers on main campus or Stellenbosch campus. That's a really good thing to look into, so there's no shame in being at a caucus and going, hey, I actually didn't know that. Thank you so much for bringing that in. I am going to read up more on that and I'm going to find a solution to that instead of going, no, man, everybody knows what communism is. I don't need to explain it now. But deep down, you're like, never heard of that term in my life. People can see right through that. So just be honest. The more honest you are, the more people will actually lean towards voting for you. Beautiful. So now that we're still on the caucus topic, do the two of you have any tips on how to best prepare for caucus? Is there anything specific that you guys did that was that you felt really made caucus easier for you or more bearable? Be it writing your speech over 20 months or whatever, or consulting people, or doing a mock caucus with your friends. Like, is there anything that you did that you would advise someone to do as well that helps with that caucus experience? Maki, you can start us off again.
Okay. So the first thing is, I think definitely going into caucus knowing why you're applying for cluster convener, because I think it's always like, you can always feel like I'm applying for a leadership position either for the money or like just to have a position like for my CV. But I think like for me it really helped because I knew probably for a full year that I wanted to apply for cluster. Like it wasn't Harker, it wasn't TSR, it wasn't like, it was specifically cluster, for the simple reason that I felt I'd have the space to do what I wanted to do without sort of the restrictions that other leadership roles might put on me. And so that was like my driving force. And also like I spoke to Letu when I just like asked her a few questions because she was the cluster convener in my first year. And I really I loved cluster in my first year. And I thought, well, she probably has some good ideas. She probably knows what it's like working with SS here, like all that kind of stuff. And then also I actually had a discussion with one of the prim candidates in my res, which ended up being the prim Leander. And I was like, okay, I'm applying for cluster. And he was like, cool. Tell me what your like story is. And then he literally just came at me. He was like, but how you can defend this? Like, what's that? Why do you need a cluster convener? Like, what is this? Whatever. And I was like, dude, I was like attacked. I just went to go see my friend.
Yeah.
And then jiggy at the caucus. But like, it really helped because I was like, someone literally came for my jugular with everything I wanted to say. And so I was like, I think that helped because I was a lot more calm and cool because like I was still really nervous, but I was like, you know what, I can defend my reasons for being here a lot more fully than I would have been able to had I not had that conversation like 2-3 days before.
Yeah, so true. And it's so I know I did a mock caucus with a friend when I was going to do SRC, and it really helps when your friend can do what Luyanda did, because it's let them be as savage as they need to be so that you can come to your senses if you need to come to your senses. It's like, wooden mic on idols. You don't want your friend to go sing Kanti, they're going to make a fool of themselves and they're going to say, oh, but Maki said I'm good at this. So it's really, really good advice to start off with your friends and be like, hey, listen, I want to be cluster convener. Do you think I can do it? Okay, here's my speech. What do you think about it? But also, obviously, you need to test your audience because you can't come to Wama that also wants to run for cluster convener and be like, Wama, do you want to be cluster convener? Because I'm going to say, and be like, Wama, do you think I can make cluster convener? I'll be like, no, you cannot. You know that. I'm not going to fool around. So test the people that you are allowing to speak into that. Really, it's a really sensitive moment when you're considering applying or just applying or launching into caucus. But really, really good to have a friend that's going to do what Luyanda did and just fire away, because then it's the same questions you get at caucus, but it's coming from a place of love and coming from someone that wants you to actually have the best answer for that question. So good. Ayesha, hit us with some of that wisdom. How can we best prepare for our caucus?
I think for me, what helped me the most was, I think a big thing about cluster is that it will be very difficult to think through everything that you need to think through if you make it a split-second decision to apply. And I think, like as Maki said, she was thinking about cluster for almost a whole year before, and it was in the back of my mind as well for a really long time. And I think having your ear to the ground while you're thinking about applying and speaking to people while you're going through the application process, and as Maki said, like telling people like, I'm thinking of applying, like, what do you see cluster as? What do you want to see from?
Ooh, sorry, you are frozen on my end. I don't know if it's my network.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys. I'm back. Sorry. Marty's Wi-Fi, I tell you. I'm not sure where I cut off. But yeah, I think basically just trying to engage as much with the different communities, like with all of the different residences and PSOs that are in your cluster, like just engage with as many diverse groups of the students as possible and see what they actually want and what are the biggest kind of gaps that are in leadership at the moment. Yeah.
Good. And it really helps, like you said, Ayesha, to not be thinking of, yes, I said in the previous interview as well that a lot of great leaders have been made in that hour before the application deadline. Like a lot of great decisions have been made by people who were like, I'm not going to run. And they're like, that's it, I'm doing it. But it really helps to be interacting with people instead of just being in your bubble of what you think the community needs. And it just looks way more authentic when it's something you have been doing. It's really awkward when it's election season and then all of a sudden Ayesha's in my DMs and she's like, so Wama, what do you think the biggest problems at Tygerberg are? It's like, oh girl, you have never even once asked how I am, and now I must tell you what I've been through. So it really helps when it's something you've been considering for a long time and it's in line with the way that you've actually felt compassion and been passionate about the community that you want to serve. But definitely interact with the people, because most likely the people you interact with are the people that are going to come with questions at caucus. So kind of get the caucus question before the caucus. Just do some hot chocolate meetings,
Yeah.
So that is some really solid advice for anyone who is stressed about caucus and is overthinking caucus. And another thing I said in the previous interview was, you really think people remember every mistake you make at caucus, but they honestly don't. Like, I know when I think of caucus, I can think of many times where I was like, to someone's answer, but I cannot give you specifics. I don't remember the name. I don't remember the question word for word. I don't remember the year. Like, I don't remember what Ayesha said, how she mispronounced the word at the Haka caucus. Like, I don't. People don't remember that tiny mistake that you felt was so big at caucus the whole way into your term. Because for me, I was always like, someone is going to take it, put it on Twitter 1 month into my term and be like, do you remember Wama's caucus answer? No. So don't beat yourself up if you feel that you said the wrong thing or you weren't happy with the way you said something or presented something at caucus. It is not, I don't want to say it's not a big deal. It is not something that someone makes a note of and reminds you every single day of your Tygerberg career that you said that thing at caucus. It really doesn't go that way. So don't overthink it. So as a cluster convener at Tygerberg, I think a lot of students might be wondering what power you have by being in the role. Where do you feel that your influence lies as a cluster convener at Tygerberg? What are some spaces that you have found yourselves being able to infiltrate by virtue of being a cluster convener? Be it meetings with the dean, meetings with other staff members, or just having newcomers or having students be able to open up to you, which they wouldn't have done if you weren't cluster convener. Just if there is a student out there who really wants to make a difference to Tygerberg campus, how do you feel that them being a cluster convener, how will this be an outlet for them wanting to make an impact? Maki, are you there?
I feel like you keep starting with me.
I can go if you want.
Low-key.
Hi.
No, just kidding aside. It's fine.
I see these strategies. Maki's just like, sneak some time, Google it a bit. Sorry, I should come.
Okay. Okay, so in terms of influence, I think, in my opinion, our largest influence is with the students indirectly via their house committees. Especially, like, I think not just on Tygerberg, I think also in Stellenbosch, because I mean, I think there was one night, literally 3 days into our term. I mean, it was like the Wednesday evening that I saw how big cluster can actually be, and I think it was a shock not just for us but for our conveners in Stellenbosch, because there was like this whole thing, and then they sent a message on like all these group chats, and it became like this, like, people, like, I've never seen so many people in my life, and we were able to do that as well on our own campus, and it's like, you literally have so much influence with, like, amongst the students if you can get the house committees to cooperate with you and to work with you. I think that's one of the biggest things. And then also, I think being able to like speak directly to people in the center of student communities, people like Peter Kloppers and I guess every now and then, well, Dr. Choice, but she's not in center of student communities. So it's like, it's that kind of thing of having a direct line between students and the center of student communities, and being able to actually like explain your grievances to someone who works in the office. I think that's a big thing. Like, if something really bothers someone within a resident space, you're not just speaking to your haka or your prim or whatever, you're speaking to someone who works in that office 5 days a week, and they can then take it to their boss. And it's that idea of like, you have that influence, and if someone comes to you with a problem that's big enough, then they can, like, you can take it up where it needs to go up. And if, yeah, so I think it's that. And even if like it doesn't get taken up the way you want it to, you can then create the space yourself, because you have hakas and teams that are so willing to work with you and create the space you need to have, like, you need to create in order to do what you need to do, if that makes sense.
So good. And you're touching on a really important theme of cluster convening, and that is teamwork. You don't just become a cluster convener and then decide that you're going to infiltrate every res your own way and ignore the haka, and it just adds to a more positive experience to have a good relationship, a good working relationship with the house committee and with other leadership structures, management and student level. No, management and student level, let me say. I won't give them a hierarchy. But it's really great because it shows that the extent of the impact that you can make can range from the life of a student, which is also very big to someone's life, and also the life of all students on a campus and institution level, depending on where you want to take the fight and how you want to approach your term. So beautiful. Ayesha, anything you want to add here?
I think Maki said a lot of what I was thinking as well. Particularly when it comes to the students, I think a lot of people, including myself, underestimate how well connected the platform of being a cluster convener brings you to the student community. And I think especially kind of having that space where all of the communities on Tygerberg, like in our cluster specifically, all of the communities you're literally helping them connect with each other, and you're helping bring that community closer. And I think having all of those connections within all of those different communities really helps you kind of bring your vision to life, because everything that happens, it's not just on a residence scale or on a PSO scale. Like, it happens on a community-based scale where everyone, all of these diverse group of people from Miro, from Katkies, from Francie, from Oslo, all of them are coming together into this one space. And I think that's one of my favorite things about cluster, is that it's not, a lot of the times residences and PSOs, they act within their own niches, and there's no sort of drive to bring any of them closer together, because nobody's there to sort of help them bridge that gap. And I think the platform of cluster really helps build that community to what it really can be.
So beautiful. It's poetic. the things the two of you are saying. Oh, by the way, I'm taking notes. I've been taking notes in all of these interviews because our leaders are so wise. I told my mom, I'm like, the leaders at Stellenbosch University are so ridiculously wise. Wow. Just the quality. I really, really love what she was saying there, Ayesha. And hey, you guys, my phone just went off. And you know what that does to your train of thought?
Yeah.
You know what it does? Yeah, I was ready, but I loved when you were talking about connecting because you get to connect different races and different people, and we might underestimate the necessity for connection and the power of connecting different communities, because so many times the disputes and tensions we have on campus, as you would know, are because people stay in their circles. And then when they cross hairs with another circle, ignorant things happen because they never connect. So getting to play a role in connecting people is not just for the social fun of it, but it really is as fundamental as you put it, Ayesha, that it is a great opportunity that you get as a cluster convener to connect. You connect the world, I dare say. So Ayesha, I'll start with you so that Maki can jot some answers down. We know at Tygerberg that academics are a thing. Everyone, well, not everyone, most people just want to get their degree and go. I think that's what I'm at right now. But there is almost this fear of dabbling in something else beyond the scope of what your degree is, because I think in our heads, we assume that taking on something extra, it runs at the exact same time that your class schedule runs, at the exact same time that your tests run. And that really isn't the case. So when it comes to the cluster convener schedule, how does your schedule look typically as a cluster convener? Are you in meetings all day, every day? If I'm running for cluster, should I then put my degree on hold? Like, what impact has the role had on your schedule, your daily schedule as a human being? And have you found that it has had a lot of impact on your academics as well? Have you had to change your approach academically, how you're studying? You don't need to tell us your marks. We're not here for that file yet. But just did it really disturb the schedule as much as I think a lot of us think leadership does?
I think, I'm not gonna lie, it does change your schedule, but it's not in the way that's necessarily destructive like people think. Just like logistically, like realistically for people, typically for Maki and I, we have a meeting with the other cluster conveners every Monday on main campus, and that's one of the most time consuming parts of being a cluster convener, is constantly touching base with all of the other cluster conveners, which is difficult for a Tygerberg cluster conveners particularly. I'm sure you experience this as well, Wama, with traveling, because you have to add so many hours to your travel time. But at the same time, interacting with people on main campus is wonderful. Like, you get to experience all of these different types of people and people studying different degrees, and you open up your world so much more just by doing that. And I think that's really great. But academically, I haven't changed any of my sort of study strategies, and I haven't been studying more or less or anything like that. My marks haven't changed. Like, it's just another thing in my day. Like, different people have different priorities. Like, some people prioritize going to the gym or walking their dog, and that's just something you incorporate into your day. And if that's something that you want to cultivate, then that's something that you incorporate. And I think leadership is the same thing. Like if leadership is something that you want to cultivate within yourself, and if building communities is something that you want to work on and grow in the community around you, then that's something that you're going to sort of put time aside for. And I think that's all that there really is to it. I think it's just about prioritizing your time. And I think it's a lot less strenuous than people make it out to be, because I think there are strenuous times, like with Haka, a week is really stressful. It's the same with cluster convener. You have a few events during a week, it is stressful. But during the rest of the year, and even during a week, you have your co-cluster convener, you have a whole team to help you. Like it's not like you're in this alone. And I think a lot of times I've been so lucky to have Maki as my co-convener, because a lot of times if I'm feeling like stressed, then you have someone who understands exactly what you're going through, and you have someone you can be like, listen, I'm really struggling. I just need a break for a little bit. Can you kind of take the wheel for a while? And just that sort of relationship is like, it helps a lot. So it's not like you're thrown in the deep end with everything and you're alone with your academics, and your academics is going to be fire and stuff. Like that's
running the university. I honestly think some people think once you sign up for leadership, they give you the keys to Stellenbosch University, and then you must just make everything work on your own.
Yeah.
I really loved what you said about that it does change your schedule, but it doesn't destroy your schedule. Just paraphrasing here. But that is what you said, ma'am. That is what you said. And I think a lot of the time people confuse having more free time with thinking that they're having more fulfilled time, which isn't necessarily the case. Just because you wake up, go to class, come back, study a bit, and then nap and then rest, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what fulfills you. But just because your plate is completely empty doesn't mean that you are living your best life and your most fulfilled life. And people with a bit more on their plate, it doesn't mean that they're striving for things just for the sake of being busy. It really is, like you said, Ayesha, where if you're passionate about gym, you are going to have time for gym. When I look at my schedule, I honestly go, to think that I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. and work out, just take me, Lord, because I just couldn't do it. So it's exactly the same, that there is someone going, how do you not wake up at 4 a.m. and work out? Like it makes sense. So if you're really passionate about it and it is in line with who you are and what you believe, you really do make time for it, because it actually contributes to you feeling better, feeling more whole and fulfilled, because you're actually doing something that is a calling. It's a part of you. It's like eating food. So a change to the schedule does not mean your schedule has been destroyed. And I really loved, I giggled when you said, I don't study more, and I don't study less, because I was like, yeah, that's me. And the worst part is I always tell myself that I'll just study more if I need to. I'll make time. I'll study more if I must. And then I find myself the day before end of block, and I'm like, Wama, you haven't changed.
What happened?
But what I always say is that it doesn't matter what you do. The day before the test, everyone is stressed. Even the ones who study from
Nobody's
day
prepared the day before.
Literally.
The fact that
everyone is stressed. So I might as well stress with a proper reason. Like, let me stress because I actually need to. But that's just me. That's the mess that I am. But I really, really love that. Maki, did you see me stalling for you there, making sure that you have all the time?
Thank you, Wama. Thank you. I think, yeah, Ayesha said everything. Ayesha said everything that I think is very important. Like, yeah, Mondays, in my opinion, were booked off. Like, even if we came back, because I think we leave around 4:30. The meetings usually at like 5:30 or 6. So you're kind of driving through traffic, and then you get there, and then you come back at like 9, maybe 10, sometimes 11. So like for me, I just got into the habit of saying Mondays are booked off. Like, we were very lucky in that we didn't write any tests on Tuesdays. So it was very much just a thing of, we come back on Monday, I can relax, I can watch an episode of series, I can do whatever I need to do that isn't going to be strenuous, because obviously, like, with driving, with doing all that stuff, it does take a lot of energy to some degree. But I think also our convener group was quite nice in that they kind of were very, like, it was almost like this idea that you're a student before you're a cluster convener, and your parents are paying for you to be a student, not for you to be a cluster convener. So it's like, if you know you have a test, you don't have to go to that meeting. Like, you can provide a reason. If you know there's something that's happening, you like don't have to go. And I think Aisha and I kind of, for the most part, made it a point to not go to a meeting if it was the Monday before we had an end of block, because you know that that week before end of block is so important. Like, it's literally like where your energy is like at peak level, and you can't waste a second. And they were very forgiving of that fact, and I really appreciated that. And I think that also like contributes to the idea that you're not. I think also, like, by the time you get to fourth year, you're not really studying more. Like, you know how you study. You know, 2 days before the test, it's like, let me get the spots, let me get the summary, let's do all the other little tricks. You know, like, it's just you know yourself at a point. And it's, I think it's also being honest with yourself, but also I think it's also like, there are times when you realize, for example, O week this year was a mess. It was a lot of effort. And I remember I was in forensics, and I don't know if you've been through forensics, but forensics is honestly, I don't want to say it's the devil's work, but it is horrible. Like, it's horrible as a module, and it's horrible as a rotation. And there's just so much work. And like, I had to be honest with myself. Like, I was like, Maki, you're literally like, you're behind. And it's also that idea of, because I don't think I've ever had to be like, acknowledge the fact that I was behind on academics, or like, I was always like, oh, it's fine, you know, everything's chill, I still have like 2 weeks, a week, whatever. But I mean, forensics was 2 weeks, and I had 3 days to study 2 weeks worth of work, and I was like, this is not happening. But luckily, Ayesha was kind enough to like, no, it's fine, I'll take the reins. Like, Maki, you need to go study. Like, don't go to this res ed session. Go study. Like, go sit in your room and read those notes. Like, I want to know. And so I think it's that idea of like, you having her as a partner, I think was very helpful. And like, because we pushed each other. We're like, no, you have to kind of maintain what you were before cluster, and just have cluster be an add-on. It's like something you're passionate about, but it shouldn't be your main priority while you're in varsity, if that makes sense.
Really, really beautiful. And what you are saying is something that I think a lot of leaders need to hear, is that I know for me personally, especially in the beginning, in the fetal stages of my leadership at uni, I always told myself there were about 50 other people who considered running for this position, who decided not to because they worried about how they would juggle end of block, or how they would juggle this test, or this week, hell week, blah, blah, blah. And I acknowledged all of that and still applied. So, girl, it doesn't matter what you're going through. Push through it, because you got yourself in this mess, and just juggle everything. I used to put myself in that box in the fetal stages, and it is such a terrible place to be in, because a lot of the time it is what everyone else is thinking. Because once you step into leadership, people kind of forget about self-care for you. So if you stop self-caring for you, odds are no one else is going to be self-caring for you. At least the two of you seem to have had a really good relationship of, no, listen, I am not about to see you go down like this. Go and study. It's very rare to have someone, usually in leadership, you have to look in the mirror and be like, Wama, we are not going down like this. You're not going to study. So don't be ashamed of going, listen, I do still love being cluster convener, but this week is end of block. and I have to prioritize at some point my academics, because we all know as leaders, sometimes we're just like, yeah, I do think I am studying a degree at some point, somewhere there, but for now I'm going to focus on this. But there do come those moments when the degree comes here, right in front, and there's no shame in that. It's part of the game of balancing, having the things we have on our plates. I see KG here. He's like a loyal fan of mine, kind of like a groupie, guys. I can't shake it. It's been going everywhere that I've gone. A little stressful, but glad to have you, KG. Glad to have you. Look how proud he is.
I'm running for Tygerberg cluster convener.
Please do.
I'm running for Tygerberg.
Imagine.
Not even Jabula can stop. Not even Jabula. I'm running.
Might as well.
This is my research.
You must
this
already
is my focus
Tygerberg
research
at this point.
I'm telling you, I spend more time there than I do on main campus.
Facts.
I can vouch.
I'm sure
and
campus security here recognizes you.
It didn't even ask for my student card anymore. It's like, how's it?
Now, we see you, KG. Welcome to our channel. We're about to get into the really lit stuff now. It's about to get real heated. Let me go for Ayesha again during this. You must know if I start rocking back and forth, it's about to get hot. Like I'm making waves.
Making tea, it's like stirring.
Yeah, I'm showing you the signal that I'm about to stir. Nah, don't worry. My question is there something that you went through, or a time period, or something that you faced in your term as cluster convener that was really difficult for you or really challenging, and it was something that you can definitely point at and go, if I wasn't cluster convener, this would not be stress. This would not be my challenge today. Was there a really difficult thing or time as cluster convener that you faced that you are willing to share, of course, and have any advice if someone if the next cluster convener were to go through the same thing, what helped you process through that? She's thinking of a long list and she's like, which one?
Just kidding. No. I think it's weird because immediately when you started on asking your question, my immediate reaction was to think about the period in the beginning of our term where everything with the anti-GBV movement was really kicking off. And I think then you carried on with your question and you said, if I hadn't been cluster convener, I wouldn't have had to deal with that stress. And I think that that's not entirely true, because I think just being, by virtue of being, I guess, who I am, it would have still been a really stressful time. But I think that's also one of the things about being a cluster convener, is that you're so on the ground with the people that you're serving, with the community. You're so on the ground with everything that it's not necessarily that this is a cluster convener specific thing. It's that it's this community thing that you're just creating the space for. So I think it's not that GBV was particularly difficult because I was a cluster convener. I think it's just because the challenges that GBV brought during that time were kind of adding on to the stress of being in a new leadership position, because we were all still trying to kind of get the ropes of what it means to be in this position, and kind of we hadn't even had any training yet or anything, and then we were kind of put in the situation where the students needed to feel like they were being led, and university management wasn't taking that initiative. And I think that kind of fell on a lot of student leadership bodies with that responsibility shouldn't necessarily have laid, if that makes sense. So I think for me, I would say the GBV era, both last year and this year. But again, it's not necessarily specific to being a cluster convener. And I think if people find themselves, like they will find themselves, like GBV isn't going anywhere. Like the next group of cluster conveners will have to deal with it again. And I think in those times, I think the only... Sorry, I think... Were you saying something, Wama?
Oh, I was saying it's definitely not going anywhere because we literally started with it and are ending with it. So, yeah.
Literally. Yeah, I think... I think my main tip when dealing with, for example, GBV, anything that requires a lot of kind of strength of every kind, is just to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Like as Maki said, you're a student before you're a cluster convener, and just remember during those times that you're also a human being before you're a cluster convener, and just make sure that no matter what people are saying, no matter what pressures people are putting on you, that you're taking care of yourself first, because you really can't give to other people what you're not even giving to yourself. Like it just
If you can't love yourself, how in the world you gonna love somebody else? Can I get an amen? And Drag Race like this. I really love the fact that you mentioned it's not necessarily something you went through because you were cluster convener. It was a challenge that you had to face because of your passion and because of your heart for people and because of your heart for justice. And the fact that you were cluster convener got to play into you being able to be a leader in that space. And actually, because I know I was like, yes, Maki and Ayesha, okay, sign, give me my number, I'll get in the bus, thank you, bye. I felt led. I was like, you must be nice. It wasn't necessarily that you look back and you go, I would never have been in that situation if I hadn't applied. Sometimes it's exactly where you were meant to be, and it's exactly where you were going to be, cluster or not, no matter what your title is. It might feel like because of the title you have that you landed up in there because you had the title, but 99% of the time you are going to be where you would have been because your passion has led you there. I think even with GBV, you might find that there are some leaders, maybe somewhere in the world, who are like, no, thank you, not getting involved. No. And you're not going to find those leaders in a protest in Cape Town. They're not going to dress up in black and go out and protest. They're not going to do it. And even though they have a certain title, they're still not going to do it. So I think it's really important what you're highlighting here is I think sometimes people get really bitter about a position they were in because they go, if I hadn't done X, Y, Z, if I hadn't run for this, if I hadn't been this, I wouldn't be in the situation now. And that can range from what you had to sort out for someone, what you had to be part of, academics, anything. It's very easy to blame the role that you took up, but 99% of the time you're going to follow your passion. And if anything, allow yourself to be in cluster convener so that you can use it as a tool to promote your passion and actually be even more effective in what you are doing, because the two of you have been freaking phenomenal with GBV. I don't know if you know it, but I know it. I see it. You have been ridiculously phenomenal in just the way that you have led through it. You are both very passionate about and very involved in it, but more than that, the way that you have led us through it has been really, I've been inspired by it. It's what we're lacking now in COVID. We're all going through COVID, but no one's really leading us through the pain and trauma of COVID. So really big ups to you. I think I've been singing praises to the two of you, but I'm not going to stop anytime soon. Now, you know, I'm a little biased. Maki, I'm sure you'd like to add on there.
I think definitely what Ayesha said. I think like that first week of September, literally the first week of our term, has probably been for me personally as well, like the most challenging time in my life, because like we were driving back and forth between places. I think like you think of the cluster values. Now cluster values are collaboration, accountability, respect, and empathy. And for me, for example, I didn't really know that GBV was like such a massive thing. And I think in that week, like that weekend before the 1st of September, literally put it in front of everyone's eyes. And it's almost like, and this is the thing I say about the class, like the previous class conveners, is that I don't think it's that they weren't doing their job. I think it's just that they weren't put in the position that we were put into. And it's almost like no one could ignore this. This was someone who was around our age. This had happened to her. And in that week, just so many more stories came up. And it's almost like, even if you haven't experienced it personally, even if you can't know, like if you don't know something as violent, you had to be empathetic. Like you had to take note of it at that time. And I think it was the first time that we literally had to pull all of our resources, like all of our heart guards, and be like, listen up. We cannot be each doing their own event. Like I remember that first day, like we had a meeting, we're like, guys, we cannot have everyone doing a vigil every other night. Like it's not going to make sense. And we need to pull together as a cluster. And that like collaboration, like you think about collaboration, and I always thought about it, like it was like a buzzword. Like, yes, in my caucus, collaboration is important. But when you see it play out in front of your eyes, if you see like to see such a well-organized period for me was amazing. I was like, this is like, I've never seen our campus work together so well. And it's purely because every single team player was willing to be a team player, and they were willing to do their part to help everything happen and help people heal the way that they needed to do. And I think in us being able to do that on our campus, we ended up being able to translate it on Stellenbosch campus, which is something I didn't even think we would be able to do, because Stellenbosch is such a big space, and you don't think, like, Stellenbosch is massive. Like, in your head as a first, you're like, oh, Stellenbosch is big. Huh? Stellenbosch is massive. Like, people live their own lives. People have Dilapa, and then they have this place, and they have that place, and they have 10,000 libraries, and they, like, people live such individual lives in Stellenbosch that it's like, it's almost, in your mind, it's almost impossible to have people connect through one vision. And I think, like, to be able to see that was very, like, amazing for me. But at the same time, I remember by Wednesday of that week, I was gone. Like, I was done. Thursday was the protest. I think we had something for the Friday, and everyone just slept. Like, we were exhausted. And it's like, but we had to allow ourselves to be exhausted. And it's, so I think it was challenging, not just like physically, like organizing stuff and logistically, but it was also like mentally taxing. I think I didn't, okay, sorry, I shouldn't diverge into personal stories, but so I didn't cry that whole week, because I was like, I think it was like, I was empathetic, and I could get, like, I was very passionate about what's happening, but I think I wasn't letting it get to me. I was kind of like trying to stay strong. And then the Thursday was the protest, and at the protest, I lost my bank card. And so the Friday was Pops Camp and all that. So I went to the bank, and Jabula was kind enough. He drove me to the bank before we had to leave Pops Camp. And I get to the bank, and the bank lady is like, okay, we'll replace your card. Where do you stay? And I was like, I stay on campus in Tygerberg, but I'm from Joburg. And she's like, because all my addresses and stuff were my address in Joburg. And she's like, yeah, but if we need to find you, where will we find you? I'm like, on campus. She's like, okay, you need to change all of your account details to be your campus address in 7 days. Otherwise, we're going to freeze all of your accounts. Jiggy, out of nowhere. Guys,
Yeah.
I literally, like, I was like, this is not happening. Get out of the bank at Tygerberg. I call my dad. I'm like, listen up. This is the tea. This one wants to shut down my account because my residence is not my permanent address. Are you mad? I was like done. I was like so like frustrated. And he's like, okay, no, it's fine. Do you know who the bank manager is? And luckily, like, I'd seen his picture as I walked in, and like he was at the till next to the lady. So like, yeah, it's okay. Go back inside. I'm gonna speak to the bank manager. Just call me when you get to the front. I was like, cool, fine, whatever. Get to the front of the queue. Get to the bank manager. Now the bank manager had heard like this whole situation, and he was like, listen up, like, I understand where the city's coming from. We have to do this because by law, blah, 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 blah. Guys, I broke down. I was like, guys, and I'm so tired, and I lost my card at the protest. And I'm just like, guys, I had a breakdown in a bank.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if that's not adulting. I had a ledge, like, I was crying tears. My t-shirt was wet. Because I think I hadn't let myself like be free, like actually feel what I'd been feeling the whole week. And like it all happened in that bank. Like I was like gone. And Jim, the guy was very kind. He was like, no, it's fine, I'll change it back, but like just this one time, don't lose your card. And like, how was the protest? What do you think about what the president said? Like, he was very sweet. And I really appreciated that from someone. I think it was nice to have that kindness shown to me by someone I didn't know, almost like at the end of a very stressful time. But definitely, I agree with Ayesha. Like, that first week of GBV was very stressful. And I think even now, it's almost the idea of we were so separated from it, I guess. Like, it wasn't something that was in our face. Like, we knew about it and we were there and we were fighting against it. But to have something like that happen in our own space, I think, even though like I'm not on campus and Ayesha is, it's still like heavily affecting me. Like, this cannot be happening. Like, this is unacceptable. And I think for Ayesha and Jesse and all those people that stood up to be able to say, we're not going to stand for management not doing anything again. We are going to do what we need to do, and like actually making the plans and making the progress that needed to be made. I think that was so essential. And I think even for the future classic conveners, like, you cannot ignore GBV. Like, even the ones in Stellenbosch, like, it has to be a specific part of your mandate as a classic convener to work with the anti-GBV societies in our university and try, like, somewhere within your agenda, make sure that people are actively engaging on this topic and knowing about it and actually fighting it, and not just being against it, but actually being like anti-GBV.
Yo, beautiful. Mic drop. All of that.
Sorry for
all of that was no, we love it. As long as it's being recorded, we love it. I think you mentioned how what we had been doing at Tygerberg even began to influence Stellenbosch campus. And I laughed because I wrote in my notice that the satellite campus, as we have been called once to my face, actually influenced the main campus, which is why I stay calling Tygerberg the main campus. But okay, maybe KG will fight me. I don't know. But it's really beautiful because it speaks to just a bigger principle, and that is, if you are doing something and you're doing it sincerely and you're doing it well, doesn't matter if you're doing it with one person, two people, three people, you have the power. It sounds very cliche, but you have the power to change the entire world, because you can influence a bigger organization and a bigger group that has a larger reach and a larger influence, just by being so sincere in the space and the territory that you have. So that is beautiful. And something now in the story you were sharing, it just reminded me of something I had to learn the hard way in my leadership, is because we get a particular title, be it cluster convener, be it ARCA, be it whatever, when you are in a particular crisis or situation that other students are also part of and other people in the world are part of, you sometimes tend to want to lead everyone through it. So yes, we are going to protest, all of us, but us, Ayesha and Maki, are going to be leading the admin behind this, the admin behind that. If someone gets hurt, we are going to be there. We're going to run, and we know this, and we know who to call. And you get so caught up in having led everyone through something that you actually haven't taken that moment to go, okay, so what was I actually going through, like emotionally, when all of that was happening? And then you get that moment where you're at the bank and your poor teller says the wrong thing to you at the wrong time, and you're just like, that's it. Like, I quit the gig. I'm done. I'm out. I'm weeping. It's like, I don't know if you guys did this when you were children, because I used to do it a lot. If something would happen, like if my mom would yell at me for something, if I got hurt anyway, even a tiny splinter, any time between the time that she had just yelled at me and before I got to heal from that yelling, if I got hurt, I would weep like loud, not because of the actual hurt, but because I'm letting out everything I felt while I was being yelled at, and I just want to scream at how scared I was of being reprimanded, even though I am the problem, but fine. So that actually stays with you, especially in leadership, where if you're like, okay, no, I'm just going to be strong through it, I'm going to grin and bear it. At some point, someone's going to go, hey, Ayesha, and then they throw a water balloon in your face, and it's like all giggles, but you're like, why? And it's this exaggerated thing. Just you haven't taken the time to actually be led as well. Like, we are leaders, but we all need someone in our support system that also makes us feel led. Whenever I go through something, or I feel like I've had to lead people through something, I am lucky enough because I can go to my dad, because he does leadership courses and everything. And I'm like, yo, we went through the most. And he'll be like, no, but think about it. You handled it like this. Well done. Now, how did it make you feel? All of that. So as much as we take on the role of serving people and leading, which is beautiful, we very much are human, like Ayesha said. And we have to make it a priority as well for ourselves to prioritize our humanness. All right, so
oh my word, it's just me and you, Wama.
You and I see Maki and KG
Just
in the
me and you.
They're just trying to make a YouTube channel on the side, just trying to make money big. But it's fine, because we are actually at our last question, which is very.
I wonder
very
who's going to go first.
Maybe I should
I
ask you
think
the
Maki
question.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Maybe I'll go first. Who knows? To surprise you. My final question is, for someone who is now sitting listening to this over the YouTube, over the podcast, over whatever, who really wants to be a cluster convener at Tygerberg, what is your final piece of advice, or something you wish someone had told you before coming into it? Just what is your advice to that person in this position? What's the one thing, if they're going to forget everything in this interview, all they're going to remember now is what you're about them? What is that one thing? I mean, you can repeat something you've said if you want to echo that. You can bring in something new. Yeah.
I think for me, what I immediately think about is what the actual definition of cluster is, because I think for a lot of people it's such a vague concept, and a lot of people don't know, like, what is cluster, like, what do you guys do? And I think a lot of people don't realize, and this is what I want whoever is thinking of applying to remember, is that cluster isn't this separate entity. It's not like a haka body. It's not a separate entity from what's going on campus. Cluster literally consists of all of the different communities. It consists of Francie, Kakis, Miro, Hippo, Ubuntu, NKJ. It consists of Osla, all of the communities. They make up the cluster. It's not like all of the communities are separate and cluster is separate. Like, all of the stakeholders of cluster consist of every single student. So you can't neglect a single community when you go into this. You can't go into this and think that you're going to impose your own ideas and your own sort of what you want to do onto the cluster and expect buy-in. Like, you need to have people in the community who tell you, like, this is what the community wants to do with cluster, because ultimately they are the cluster and they are what's going to make your term, and they are what's going to drive you, and they are what's going to keep you going, and they are literally what's going to tell you what they need and what they want and how they want to do it. And all you have to do is literally listen. You have to listen and create the space, and as you said, lead them and assist them in any way that you can. And I think the most important thing is what I just said, is creating that space of allowing all of the different communities that make up Tygerberg to come together and connect with each other. And I think that sums up what I think is most important, is just connecting the different communities to make up what is Tygerberg.
So beautiful. And what you're talking about is my personal motto in my style of leadership. And that is, whenever I step into any form of leadership, positional or non-positional, it's not so much because I believe I am the best woman for the job and the best one to change all of Stellenbosch University and Tygerberg campus, but I do believe that I have the gift and opportunity to bring people out of their shell and bring people together, and those people can come and come up with solutions I never would have thought of myself. So it's enabling. I know enablers are usually associated with like addicts, but they can be positive enablers in the world too.
Absolutely.
And you just want someone. I always picture, if I did not believe in myself, the number of things I never would have applied to do. And by virtue of that, number of people who would not have gone, I saw the way Wama did it, and I thought, hey, I also want to do something like that. I saw the way Ayesha did it, and I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I can do it. So it's not even about how tired Ayesha gets, how tired Wama gets, because we're old. I love saying I'm old now, because I'm like, oh gosh, I'm ancient. I'm a 90s kid. Right? We are old. So
don't fight me on this.
Weak. Our backs are, we're going through the most. But there's a youth out there, a fresh generation of really capable people who just need to see someone believe in themselves so that they can believe in themselves. They've heard it before that they can do it, but hearing it is not the same as seeing, guys, Ayesha is studying medicine, and did you see her on TV? Like, did you see her do those things? Even me, I can do those things. Welcome back, Maki.
Hi guys, sorry. Like, literally, the plugs tripped, and so the Wi-Fi went off, and it was just
not a. Yeah. I was like, you're taking this crib note business to the next level now. Now you're like, I won't even
resetting in the corner.
Consistency. That's leadership. We were just discussing the last question, which I'd posed to Ayesha, and she had just answered. And what I asked was, what is the one thing that someone who is sitting at home listening to this, whenever they're going to be listening, who really is considering being a cluster convener, really wants to be a cluster convener at Tygerberg, what is the one piece of advice you have for them, or the one thing you wish someone had told you, if they forget everything in this interview and only remember the words that will come out your mouth now? What is that thing that you really want to leave someone with?
Your vision is important. I think definitely, like, knowing what your why is and your reason for joining cluster is incredibly important, because I think past honorariums, past meetings, past everything, like, your vision is what's going to pull you through. Like, your passion for the job is what's going to keep you going. Because, like, I've heard so many people in leadership say, like, oh, I'm not paid enough for this job, and like, oh, like, whatever. And I kind of for myself, I try to make sure that if I apply for leadership, it's never for the honorarium. It's always like, I need the honorarium to be like a side hustle that I can waste on a dinner or like shoes or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be something that's important, because for me, the key to doing it is that I have a vision, I have something that I'm working towards for the community or the group of people that I'm working with or for. I think that's definitely important. Also, communication. I think I missed the question about like something that you learned. Communication is key, because you're not in class, like you're not as accountable, I think, to the people as you are in TSR, purely because people don't know, or SRC, purely because people don't know you as well. They don't know what your job entails as much as they know what a TSR member is meant to know, and they know what an SRC member is meant to know. But within the people that you speak to, so your cluster harkers and your prims and stuff, you need to be able to communicate. Like, you can't just have an idea in isolation and be like, okay, I have this idea, I'll just call everyone and say, wake up at 7:30 tomorrow. Because that happened with us. Like, I was so like everywhere that I forgot to tell people we need to wake up at 7:30 to set up for this whole thing. And it became quite a big frustration in our team, because they expected to be communicated with effectively, not just when it happens, but effective, like in due time. And I think knowing how to communicate well, when to communicate, even if you tell someone a week in advance, at least tell them earlier rather than at the last minute, because it can be very frustrating, especially in a time like orientation week or any other really stressful period in people's lives. So yeah, those two things, vision and communication.
Very beautiful. Very, very great. And, you know, when you were mentioning honorarium, I was like, if you ask anyone that has ever done a leadership role in Stellies where you get paid, the money will never be enough for what you do. Because I swear, in just your first term in leadership, you've probably spent more money than you're going to earn in your honorarium. You don't realize it because you're not counting, but like, there's a student stranded at McDonald's, you get them an Uber. There's a student crying in their room, you go buy a 6-pack of donuts and some hot chocolate at the TSS, which costs R1 million for everything, and you go and you chat with them. Then you come back and you buy yourself some more food because you need to recover. Like, the money will never make it worth it. And if anything, I would say, if you are running for the money, for your own self-care, just don't do it. Like, do not do it.
There are easier jobs to do.
Yeah, honestly, go to Craigslist and like sell some worn socks or something. I do not know, but this is not the way to do it. This is dangerous. This is dangerous if you're doing it for the money, because Maki, like you said, there are some days where the only thing you're going to be left with is your why. You're going to be exhausted physically, you're going to be exhausted emotionally, mentally. You're going to look at your marks and you're going to go, yo, and you're going to look at your fridge and it's going to be empty, or you're going to have that wine that you had from a gift when you were a judge in military academy, and that's all you're going to have, and you're going to be like, Aish, really, am I still cluster convening? And the only thing you will have left in that moment is, yes, I'm still cluster convening because this was why I started. So it's great to have that support, especially in the beginning when everyone's cheering for you, like, yeah, you made it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And there's always people that are backing you, but sometimes you are going to be alone in your room with just yourself. And the only thing you will have left is, this is why I started, and I'm not done with my why. So I'm going to keep pushing. But the president is about to address us soon. Cannot wait. We timed this
500 billion.
perfectly. Yes, we're going to find out where that money is. Hopefully we're getting a share. But thank you so much to both of you. It was... So if I'm not getting money from Stellies, can I at least get it from a president? Like, well, we young honorarium.
Honorarium
thank you,
citizen.
for voting. Not everyone votes nowadays. Give me some money. Take a young 4,000. But thank you again to both of you for making time to do this and for being so honest and sharing and investing in the future of cluster. Like I said before, I mentioned in the other interview as well that I think it really shows the quality and the heart behind your leadership when you are willing to invest in the handover of your leadership. Because that means it's not something that you wanted to do so that you would have that title for the year and do what you wanted to do, and hopefully it works, and if it doesn't, goodbye. You actually care that the vision that you're a part of is carried through to the next generation, because you see the bigger picture of the role that you're in and the potential it has, and how important it is that it is stewarded properly to the next group of cluster conveners, next duo. So thank you for taking the time as we near the end of our term to still invest enthusiastically in the role of cluster convening. It's really great to hear from you both. You're super wise, and we are so grateful and lucky to have you at Tygerberg. And your patients in the future are going to be so lucky to have you as their health professionals. So I'm excited to see where the two of you are headed, way beyond the scope of cluster convening, because you are two really genuine human beings who care about human beings. And that is all that anyone could want in a health professional, in another individual. So thank you for being amazing. Like I said, I'm going to...
Thank you so much for having this interview. I think it's absolutely amazing that people actually get to hear from the people that did it previously. Like, you didn't have to message them and get like 10,000 messages about it.
Absolutely.
But also and also thank you for paving the SRC way for our main candidate. Like, I don't think anyone besides the TSR chair. I don't think anyone besides the previous TSR chair has actually really like taken the step to make sure that their presence is felt on Stellenbosch and make sure that we have a bigger footprint than the one that we've had in the past. And I think it's absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for everything that you've done as well for us as a cluster.
Thank you, Wama.
Make me cry. I've been strong throughout all these interviews, but I think one day I'm just gonna be like, oh my God.
These interviews is gonna be your bank.
Right? I think I should have started talk show. I did email.
I agree. You're very nice to talk to. Wama Wednesdays. I love it. I love it. I support it.
I should do a young red table Wama Wednesdays.
Entanglement.
I
was in an entanglement with FU.
Listen,
I was in an entanglement with cluster.
Thank you so much. All the best with studying, and
thank you so much, Mama.
Maybe all the best for you too, for your EOB tomorrow, your last EOB before the big SI.
Doctors go, all right, you're an SI now, you should know this. And I'm like, I should. Thanks so much, guys. See you.
Bye.
Much love.